Hello and welcome to the show. By 2020, India will be the world's youngest populace. How do we engage today's youth with its governance? How do we engage governance with tomorrow's leaders and inspire them? This is exactly what Rwitwika Bhattacharya of Swaniti Intitiative is doing. Here's more about her work. In just the last 2 years, Rwitwika Bhattacharya and her team at Swaniti Initiative have helped youths deliver development solutions to nearly 100 Indian parliamentarians. From improving health amongst jute mill workers in West Bengal to creating a user-friendly database of all central government schemes, young professionals have been able to work closely with ministers of parliament, helping them make positive impact at the grassroots to millions of Indian lives. So how did Swaniti Initiative come about?
So I'll be very candid to you. I come from a family where my father was in politics, as was my grandfather. So politics was nothing new nor intimidating to me. Having grown up around politicians and
I'm sure that's a huge advantage for the kind of work that you do.
It is a little bit, but so it was the fact that in speaking to politicians, what I realized a lot was that they wanted to get new talent in, and they wanted to execute on these brilliant ideas that they had. And on the flip side, when I was talking to my friends in graduate school or elsewhere, they'd keep saying, hey, I wish I could work with this MP. And they were, because there was this distance and there was this lack of political capital that they had, they couldn't necessarily enter the system. So it was intuitive after a while, is that, if I'm hearing this every single day about how I wish I had more support and I'd get electricity to my constituency and I'd get clean water, and there's this supply where,
people want to get involved and participate.
Exactly. So why not connect the two? So pretty much being at Harvard Kennedy and being in that setting where you have all of these ideas kind of boiling, we decided let's try out a pilot. So I started working on two things. First, I said, why not work with the political party system, and let's work with the Congress Party and see if their youth wing could use some support. And that kind of fell flat. Straight out. I mean, I think, when you're working with a party, there's a tremendous amount of trust which you have to bring in to be able to bring change. And we couldn't do that in 3-4 months. So that just did not work out. Our second pilot worked out tremendously well, though. And that was with Yashwant Sinha in Hazaribagh. And so we went in and we worked on a grievance mechanism in his constituency. And it was a very tangible output they were looking for. And we were able to deliver that. And we noticed we built this goodwill with the MP. And so we realized, hey, we might have something here. So we just kept building on that model, and we are where we are today.
Yeah, so you've been able to build many such relationships with individual MPs,
yes,
opening up opportunities and
yes,
facilitating participation.
Yes.
So tell me how the process works. How do you take a young person who's educated, interested, put them in the office, of a political leader, get them to actively contribute in an environment that's potentially rather alien to them, and support them through the fellowship? It's a 2-year fellowship, correct?
Yes, at least 2 years, if not longer, yes.
Yeah.
So we get about 100 applications, we select 3 people.
Okay.
So it's a very competitive process, and we do see the best of the best applying. We train them for about a week or 2 weeks, and training isn't just how do you write a brief, how do you respond to a parliamentarian, what do you do in the constituency. It was a lot of also kind of secondary training, which is what we've learned. So, for example, when an MP says, prepare a note for me. A note is basically a 3-paragraph, very briefly, tell me point-wise what it is, right? So you and I, note is like, sticky note, like, here you go, don't forget your milk. Like, that's pretty much what a note is. But you had to kind of understand that. The second thing is the culture. Very rightly, as you said, you go into an MP's office, you're dealing with party workers, you're dealing with the district magistrate, you're dealing with constituents, you're dealing with potentially the party at the center, you're dealing with the state administration. You have a lot of stakeholders. And what we do through the training is to tell them that, look, you need to be mindful of all of these stakeholders and understand what your role is. You are a catalyst, and you're someone who came in from the outside, and you're development focused. And so it was a lot of training that goes in. Once you train them, of course, it takes about 6 or 7 months for one to actually get used to that culture, because it is a completely different culture. And it just differs from MP to MP as well. So
Yeah.
we've had a lot
And
of fun.
state to state?
Absolutely. And languages. I mean, so many different languages. And now what we've done is we have one fellow potentially work with 2 or 3 MPs. So you have different MPs, you have different experiences, and you're juggling multiple requirements at the same time. So.
Hi, my name is Apurv Tiwari. I joined Swaniti 9 months back in April 2014. I am a graduate of IIT Kharagpur and worked with the Boston Consulting Group after I graduated. And a little more than a year down the line, I realized that I needed to make a switch to the governance space, and Swaniti seemed like a very exciting prospect. Here at Swaniti, I am presently leading our research work.
Hi, my name is Rwitwika. I am a fellow at Swaniti. Prior to joining Swaniti, I was working as a management consultant in the US. About 8 months ago, I found out about the Swaniti Fellowship, and it was a great opportunity to move back to India because I had a long-standing interest in economic development, so it was a great way to segue into the field. Since joining Swaniti, I've predominantly worked in the state of Maharashtra on engagements, particularly 2 engagements. These have involved working directly with members of parliament, doing field visits in urban and rural constituencies, understanding the local landscape, the current issues, diagnosing the problems, and then putting together a strategic plan to implement interventions that will help solve those problems.
And how do you support them through these 2 years? So there's the training, of course, but once they're in there for 2 years, how do you support them?
So you go in as a Swaniti fellow. So you're an employee of Swaniti. So you get to, we get the joy of being reported to, and we get to kind of see, what's going on and really understand the issues. And so what we do is we actually have a pretty structured system where you have on every engagement an engagement manager who is within Swaniti, and they work with associates or fellows who go out in the field, and you have a daily reporting system. And you have a system where we are constantly kind of telling them that, look, this is what you do. Okay, maybe you're working on water, and we might not know about water as engagement managers, but we go out and we find a water expert who can come in and talk. And so it's this constant process of guiding fellows and making sure that the end goal is met. Our end goal is being able to deliver development. So we need to make sure that at the end of the 2 years, we have something to show that, look, young people are capable of bringing change, and this is what they've brought.
Fantastic. And do you see benefits out of this exercise to the leadership itself?
Yes. So one of the big things which we try to do is this is structured very much like a consulting firm of sorts, where we go in and we work with MPs to provide them specific development insight by having young professionals work with them on engagements. Engagements are basically problems or basic development issues that they're facing. And so the benefit to the MP is the fact that they're getting support from 27, 28-year-old who's had X amount of experience on that development issue. So yes, that is a benefit to MPs.
And what is the impact you're seeing of this inclusion that you're creating?
There's impact on 2 levels, which happens basically. You have the individual fellows impact who go through the program, and then our expectation is that they do become a future leader in the policy space. And we do see that quite a bit in terms of fellows going in and working with World Bank and UN and going into graduate schools. And there's this shift from where they came in from, and most of them come from the private sector, to being more policy oriented and trying to solve the hard problems. And then the second impact which we measure is actually in the constituency itself, which is what we're trying to do with the MP. And so there we measure impact as to what program have we brought into the ground, how many people has it impacted, and in the longer term, how have we changed the perspective of the MP. So we have a lot of MPs who come back and say, can I hire a fellow? Can I have someone stay on my staff full time? And that's just tremendous to see, because we've started already seeing a shift in attitude in terms of bringing in external support on specifically development issues. So we do measure impact on those 2 areas.
It isn't just the fellows. What parliamentarians have to say about Swaniti's approach to inviting and including youth has also been positive. Swaniti is currently a non-profit and is soon hoping to be a self-sustaining consulting service. Can you give me examples, of let's say a minister or a fellow and the kind of impact or experience they've had because of engaging with Swaniti?
Sure. So one of our favorite examples is actually in Barakpur, West Bengal. We had an MP who said, look, I have a lot of jute mills in my constituency, and what I want to do is improve the healthcare situation, because I walk into the jute mill and there are these fine granules in there. So we had fellows go in and we actually had them see what the situation was, and they realized that, you know what, there is an issue. And the fact that breathing is a major problem because there aren't enough preventative cares, and it's jute mills, so there are these fine granules which is causing a lot of respiratory diseases, COPD specifically. So what we ended up doing is working with the MP, launching actually health camps in the constituency for the jute mill workers, longer term working with the jute mill owners and figuring out, can we actually institutionalize this? And interestingly enough, the MP, who was Mr. Dinesh Vedi, very open-minded MP we've worked with, he was on the standing committee for health and family welfare.
Okay.
He said, you know what, this is actually a really good idea to hold health camps. What I propose to do is take this back and introduce preventative healthcare as a piece of legislation to the Health and Family Welfare Committee. So it turned out really good for us, going from development to policy. And as for the fellows, from the cohort of fellows who were working on that engagement, we had fellows apply to the Harvard Kennedy School for a public policy degree, and not just that, but continue on. And one of the key things that they learned from the experience was the fact that there's a fundamental knowledge gap which exists with the MPs. So the fellows worked with the Swaniti team to develop something which we call Tamrapatra, which is a database of central government schemes.
Okay.
And a lot of those schemes were mobilized in that engagement. So the fellows continued on and developed this platform which other MPs could use in mobilizing schemes for their constituency.
That's fantastic. So you've been able to create a fairly sustainable, change then. Something that's going to sort of roller coaster into something bigger.
Yes, we're hoping so. We're hoping that.
What is your goal with Swaniti?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I mean, actually, that should be the simplest one. But basically, what we see ourselves 10 to 15 years down the line is we see ourselves as a part of the government, either within the government or partnering with the government, where we're working with all 543 Lok Sabha MPs, providing them support in development issues, and even Rajya Sabha MPs for that matter.
And how are you funded? How do you support this, and how the fellows paid for?
Sure. So we are a not-for-profit. And the way that we are funded is through foundation support. So we have incredible partners who have supported us, both national and international foundations who have supported us to get the fellows on the ground, to actually support us, work with us on specific development issues. We have Forbes Marshall Foundation, for example, who's supporting us based out of Pune. We have the British High Commission. And so with the support of incredible partners who kind of help us not just with financial support, but also think through different problems, it's been phenomenal to have that support.
And do you see India's leaders and the Indian government paying for this service in the future? Paying to facilitate this inclusion and paying to benefit from this inclusion?
Absolutely, I do. And I think, in the sense that when we see MPs come back and say, can we have this fellow on our staff and I'm willing to pay, that in and of itself is indicative that there is that willingness. Where I think is the gap right now with most MPs is to show that value initially. Because the way that we are structured, the bureaucracy handles the development, and then the MPs handle more of, the connect with the people or the policy space. And now that we're shifting, the MPs do want to go ahead and support out of pocket if need be. So,
fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me on the show. It's been fantastic getting to know Swaniti.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hope you enjoyed that conversation with Rwitwika. Check out swaniti.in and subscribe to the channel so I can keep bringing you more amazing conversations on amazing pursuits. Thank you.
Well, if you enjoyed that conversation, there's more. Check it out.